Hi guys. I think that I almost just posted rather than went live. So thanks for joining me. Day 22, Proverbs 22. We are going to talk about get to versus have to again. So welcome Dean, Morgan. People are getting on now. They probably went, are we going live today? Yeah, sorry about that. I for sure was at least a minute, if not 2 minutes late. So thanks for joining me. Share this as you're getting on, just because you can keep watching, you can keep sharing. I am excited about today because I'm going to take what we talked about yesterday as grown-ups once we're 21 years old. And I talked about yesterday, once we're adults, once we're grown-ups now, there's some things we don't get to say anymore. And today I'm going to shift it around and actually flip it, because I thought it'd be fun to talk about get to again. Like right away, talk about get to again. So as you're getting on here, if you did not see yesterday, so that you can see the flip side of the word get to, that will be cool for you to connect and see. Yesterday we talked about get to as in we don't get to anymore, meaning we're grown-ups now, we've matured enough, we don't get to complain, we don't get to say I'll figure out life on my own. All of these get tos that are in kind of a negative connotation. So today, Proverbs 22, so excited to take this the reverse way. And I'm going to give credit to my husband, not only because he's on here and there's that accountability, but also because he really did bring this to our staff probably about a year ago. And it is such a great switch of two words which are get to versus have to. So take off your day 21, Proverbs 21 hat and the concept of get to, and don't let that get mixed with this, because this is the opposite way of thinking about get to. And what I love is that we realize the power of the two words get to. And today we're going to learn how all we have to do is change out the two words I have to I get to. So let's jump in. We're in Proverbs 22 and whoops, and there goes the camera. Okay. Verse 1, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. So you're saying I have to have a good name? Like, you could read that verse and even this far into Proverbs, or maybe you're jumping onto this Proverbs chapter and you've not seen any of the others and you're like, really? Like, a good name is what I'm going after? I have to have a good name? Well, it's talking about reputations take work. And the way we could replace have to with get to is I get to have a good name because it's more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. So that's a reverse. Let me bring it back to an even easier way of looking at it, just right off the bat, because we still have people joining too. If we would switch out I have to with I get to in things like work. Think about all of the Shopco people that worked there for 5, 10, 20 years, and now they don't get to get up and go to work. Now, I'm sure many of them have thought this, man, I used to have to get up and get there by 7 a.m. I used to have to go to work. But how many people who have lost a job that is not their fault at all would love to wake up and say, I get to go to work? So for me, there's been times I've thought, oh, I got to get up early and I have to take Isaiah to school. No, I get to take Isaiah to school. One, he's not driving yet, so I still can feel like I have some safety power in his life. 2, he's not away at college where he's getting himself to school, or we're hoping he's getting himself to class on time. I get to take Isaiah to school. I get to leave work and go get my kids from school. Some people, and I've said this, like, oh, I'm in the middle of the day working and I have to go get my kids at 3:15. I get to. I have a job where I can go, I'm going to go grab my kids, take them home, I'll be back. That's a get to. So I have to go to work becomes a I get to go to work when so many people don't have a job or they're looking. Or I have to spend time with my spouse tonight. I just have to. Kind of like that's going to rescue. But if we would go, I get to spend time with my spouse because it's going to help our marriage. And the fact that I have a spouse, the fact that I have a marriage to keep intact because I'm blessed with a spouse. So that hopefully that brings it back. And as you're joining us, because I see people jumping on as we go here, keep sharing that you're on. And let's go to verse 3. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. And I wrote out to the side, the prudent get to see danger and take refuge. I'm trying to fix my camera here. Sorry for the technical difficulties today. There it is. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. So that word prudent, we've talked about that a lot during this study. And prudency is like, I've talked about a lost art that go, was I prudent in that decision? Was I prudent today? And it's a weighty word to mean like, am I searching myself and am I doing things, not just that are right, but that are right and are beneficial and are godly. Prudent is such a huge word. And I love that I get to have prudency because now that we've studied wisdom in all of Proverbs, prudency should be something that we all have more of. I talk a lot about the leash, the shorter leash, and the shorter my leash is, it means the shorter the span of how I can go until I get myself in trouble. And I believe that prudency just becomes more at the forefront the more wisdom we have and the more we're seeking to be like Jesus. The more fear of the Lord we have, the more prudency. So I look at this and go, I get to be prudent because I will see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Not I have to try for prudency, but I get to. That is a being set apart standard. Love that. Okay, another get to versus have to is in verse 4. Humility is the fear of the Lord. Its wages are riches and honor and life. I think of anyone who is humble, and I wrote out to the side, I believe that they're admired. I believe that those are the people that are commented on, meaning those are the people that you hear someone say, oh, I met so-and-so. They are so humble and kind. And it's such a shock to find somebody with humility. So I read this a different way last night. I went, humility is the fear of the Lord. I get to have humility. I get to be set apart. I get to have that part of my character commented on in a good way, and like I need to be more humble. Look how that worked out. And it says that humility's, its wages are riches and honor and life. So I get to have humility. I don't have to be humble. Okay, verse 6. It says, start children on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not return from it. Now, Proverbs actually, especially verses or chapters 10 through 29, they're probabilities. And the writer of Proverbs is very clear that this is probability because that is not a promise. So if you raise up your child in the way that they should go, when they're old, they will not return, they will not turn from it. That's a probability. That in most cases, that's true. Job is a book of the Bible where he did everything right. In fact, Jesus said, have you considered my servant Job? Like, he's a very good guy and he's done everything right, yet everything went wrong. So this isn't a promise, but it's a probability. And I'd much rather go for things that are probable than things that are just, up in the air and you don't know, or you don't even try for it. So it says, start your children off. And I go, start children off on the way they should go. Like, that's a big command. That's a lot of work. That's not just think of it once a week to model good Jesus behavior. That's start them off. And I thought, but I get to. I don't have to live a life that is more honorable in the fear of the Lord. And I have to do that because then my kids will finally see it. I get to model what I hope my kids will see as an amazing life where they fear the Lord, they love Jesus, and things go right for them. And if I model it, the probability is that when they're old, they will not turn from it. Love that. Okay, verse 7, the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender. Okay, this is kind of a small right turn. We're going to talk about borrowing. Flip over to page 188 if you have my Proverbs book. You could still get this for sure. I know we're towards the end, but guess what? When these are done on day 31, I'm going to go back and start back at Proverbs 1 in April and do the next version, the NLT version. So if you have the books, turn over to page 188. I put up in my little box of my notes, I put, does this mean we should never borrow? No, but it warns us never to take on a loan without carefully examining our ability to repay it. A loan we can handle is enabling. A loan we can't handle is enslaving. The borrower must realize that until the loan is repaid, they are a servant to the individual or institution that made it. So let's go back over to the NIV. That was in the NLT version. I added those notes. It says, the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender. So I wrote out to the side, I get to wait and not borrow. That's a decision I get to make versus I have to wait, my credit's not good enough. No, I get to wait. And I get to not borrow because it wouldn't be prudent. It wouldn't be wise. If my credit won't allow me, then that's probably a great thing that God stepped in, or my bad decisions stepped in and are keeping me from other loans that could be overwhelming. So I get to wait and not borrow. I get to not be in debt for that vehicle that I didn't get approved for, because maybe it's not I have to wait. Maybe it's I get to wait because maybe there's going to be a vehicle or a house that's less money, that when I take the loan, I have more peace rather than I'm just at the max of what I can spend monthly. Verse 9, the generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. I think generosity is one that feels a little like, oh, I better be generous. I have to be generous. I feel that way when I go to like Panda Express or a store that's like, would you like to round up? Or the worst to me, like not round up, but would you like to give $5 or $10 or $15? Some of them have really ramped it up. To the children's hospital, well, my Lord, I can't say no. I mean, maybe if it was the puppy hospital or the Humane Society, I might be like, we just got rid of our animals. I don't think I want to give $10 to the Humane Society, but I still feel this guilt like, oh, I should have done that. I have to be more generous. We a lot of times view it as an encroachment on our life, as an annoyance, or as an obligation that I know I should be more generous. That's I have to. But what this is saying is if we change it to, I get to be generous. The generous themselves will be blessed, and they share their food with the poor. That is a get to. I get to. So that's the great thing about God too, is that God doesn't say, okay, everybody give $10 to the children's hospital. God says, everybody give 10% to your local church. So if you're watching from another city and you go to another church, don't tithe to our church. The people who are spiritually fed from our church, they tithe. And God gave us a percentage, which is awesome, because just like the Bible talks about the widow's mite, it talks about the widow came and gave from what she had. She gave 100% of what she had, even though it was just a few pennies. Well, that's 100%. She actually only really needed to give 10%. So she should have found out how to give a half a shekel or even less and gave that, because God said it's a percentage. So if I'm blessed, I would in total dollars give more, but in same percentage give the same as the poor. So I get to be generous, and the level in which I'm blessed mirrors the level in which I give, and vice versa. But to feel like I have to be generous can get us stingy, and then we're not even giving what the person who makes 1/10 of what we make gives, because we're just viewing it as I have to. Love that one. Okay, verse 10, drive out the mocker and out goes strife, quarrels and insults are ended. This is we get to drive out, we get to be peacemakers. This is talking about quarrels and insults, and we had a day or two at least that, well, one day of Proverbs, it was about fighting for peace, fighting to be a peacemaker. This is an action verb in verse 10. Drive out the mocker, and out goes strife. Quarrels and insults are ended. This is saying we get to drive out. We get to be bold in peacemaking. We get to be bold in confronting things. Now, I never feel like that's a get to. Let's just be honest. This is probably why I've studied peacemaking and read a few books just on peacemaking, because it's not easy for me to confront. I'd rather everybody feel happy, including myself, 24/7. Like when I talk about Tigger, when I don't feel like Tigger, I'm like, why don't I feel like Tigger? I want to feel like I want to always be not just joyful, I want to be happy too. I want everything to be awesome. So I hate it. In fact, I relate to, I'm going to say his name wrong, Chris Pratt. Everything is Awesome, the Lego movie. Loved that. I'm like, everything is awesome. I love it. I want that all the time. So it's hard for me to view driving out, confronting, having the hard conversations as a get to. This one would be the one I struggle with the most. No, I get to, not I have to. And once I do that, insults are ended. This is saying quarrels and insults are ended. So the other thing is that Satan loves when we don't deal with things, because then it just keeps our stomach ache and our issue going. He loves it when we just keep kind of the unsettledness right here, but we don't address it. Because the minute we address darkness, evil, yuck, miscommunication, awkward things, the minute we address passive aggressiveness, it just has to flee, because we're bringing light and truth and peace to the situation. Where light is, darkness can't remain. So I get to drive out junk. Yay. Okay. And last, and there's more in here. In fact, there's 30 sayings of the wise I'd like you to look through after we get off this video. But the last one I'm going to end with is verse 11. One who loves a pure heart and who speaks with grace will have the king for a friend. I wrote out to the side, few do this. One who loves a pure heart, who speaks with grace. Few, it's hard to speak with grace. So when you go, I have to always love with a pure heart and speak with grace. Like that's a big order. Well, I get to speak with grace, even in those peacemaking times. I get to love with a pure heart. And what that means is loving the people that are hard to love, that you'd say, I have to love them. You get to love them because you have a pure heart. See how this like builds on top of each other? And then you speak with grace, which that's God is love, grace, and mercy. So I get to speak with an attribute of God, which is grace, which is mercy and kindness. I get to, and it says, we'll have the king for a friend. Now, for sure, this was written back when there were kings of the land. I'm not looking for the king of the land to be my friend. I'm not looking for Trump or somebody who would be at that level. But what this is saying is that you're not going to be viewed unworthy. You'll be viewed as worthy and set apart, and few do it. So it really establishes you when you can be that person. Few do this. Few have a love with a pure heart and speaking with grace. Most of us act like we really want to act inside. We don't filter. And so I get to do this. So this was a fun one. I really don't like the peacemaking one yet again. I would prefer that it happens organically, and that's one of the most foolish thing you can do when you need to confront and address something, is to just hope for it to go away, or the organic way to fix it. So I get to, though, be a peacemaker. I get to be prudent. I get to start my children off right. I get to wait on borrowing. I get to be generous. I don't have to be generous. I get to be generous. So changing out, have to, forget to. Thank you, Pastor, Mr. Uncle, husband Sean. He's Uncle Sean to Magnolia. And I love seeing him as Uncle Sean or Daddy. but he is for sure my pastor, and I got so much from the have to versus get to. And I think that, in fact, some of you are on, and I know this, that you had said you brought this to your work. And we've gotten other emails of people saying, I brought this concept to my job. And people who don't come to Life Church are now using the I get to versus I have to verbiage and mentality. And thank you. And it's helped. So thank you, Pastor. Thank you, you guys, for taking this and not keeping it to yourself. What I would hope is that as you get deeper, because remember, we said all along, this is for us. Proverbs is for us. But when we get healthy, then we can be good for others. And then when others see it and it rubs off, or this flows out of our mouth, suddenly we're giving advice on being a peacemaker. Suddenly we're giving advice, or we're just modeling, like, you confronted that, but you were very gracious and loving in that. Wow. And you just did what you got from here, and it was modeled, and it changes your work. It changes your home. It changes our city. And we're changing the culture of the 920 by putting into practice wisdom that God gave us through Proverbs. So I see you guys saying, I'm going to bring this to my job. I needed this week. Being generous is a blessing. Some of us need to say that, because we can think that, and then we go to take out our checkbook or pay our bills, and we go, this isn't a blessing, it's a burden to give and be generous. So keep saying that, Lisa. I think it's more than positive self-talk. It's positive affirmation of what the Bible has told us this month, that I will speak that I am wise. I will speak that I am generous. I will speak that I am a peacemaker with a heart-shaped sword. Like, I am this because God is giving me the wisdom and showing me even how to walk it out. So I'm excited for Proverbs 23. Jennifer, I see you said you're struggling with real peacemaking. Not to put you out there, but just know that is my biggest struggle. I wish that everything was like we were living in the Candyland game. That would be the best to me. So the book Peacemaker by Kevin Sand or Sandy, it's Sande, is so good. The Peacemaker by Kevin Sand or Sandy, Sande. I would highly recommend it. Love you guys. Thanks for being on. Let's pray. And then I'm excited to see what day 23 holds. I don't go ahead anymore because I was crossing my chapters in teaching, and I'm going to stay focused on each. But basically I get off here and I go work on the material for the next morning. So I love you guys. Let's pray. God, thank you for my friends, that we could work through this together. And God, we can all, I see the vulnerability and the openness on here, really for ourselves to see and the world to see, to say this, generosity or peacemaking, or standing firm and creating a place where my kids learn is the hardest for me. And God, we just know that through your wisdom, you're going to make all of these paths straighter. You're going to bring more clarity and more peace in the process of changing our view and acting out wisdom. We love you, Jesus. In your name, amen. I love you guys. You're so chatty. Keep chatting. This is great. And keep sharing that you're on. Remember, June 2nd through the 5th, I'm going to have Season join me and talk about her Seeds book. So this doesn't end May 31st, which makes me even more happy, because we're closer to the end than the beginning. So I've loved having time with you. Let's keep it going. Love you guys.